What is this? What are you doing? Everyone needs a haircut right now. The little thing was driving me nuts. Elgato announced a new capture card at CES that they launched yesterday, I think, by the time you're seeing this. And it was a deviation from the norm. I feel like capture cards lately, like with every new iteration, especially on Elgato's sense, like it's not so much that any of them have like innovation involved. It's just each one Elgato has sat down and asked, what have the last ones been missing? What can we add to the next iteration to make it more modern and help supply those needs? And I feel like they've done a pretty good job of meeting those needs. You know, we're talking about things like super low latency capture as well as 4K pass-through on external cards, or even like super high frame rates and multi-app support on internal cards. You get the point. They filled out kind of a library of cards from most budget to the most features. And this is kind of our topic of interest today, is helping you understand what each of them excels at. It's doing it. I can't do anything about it. It is what it is. But the 4K 60 S Plus, there we go. But they switched it up a little bit with this one, hitting a completely different audience and a completely different use case for this guy. It is their first external USB capture card capable of capturing 4K footage in 60 FPS. And on top of that, you can capture that footage without a PC using, here, let me show you. Ready? Little SD card slot right there. It just records right to it. Here, watch, let me plug it in, I'll show you. Here, check it out. It's recording right now. It's actually recording this. I have the camera plugged into it, but you're gonna watch it on this one, so it doesn't matter. I think there are two very specific people that are gonna benefit from this pretty heavily, and we'll get into that. I also think there's one group of people that are going to buy this without reading the details and are going to be bummed out. We will get into that too. So now that we have all these cards lined up, which I think everyone, I mean, I bought my fair share of Elgato cards, but I'm pretty sure every single one in this lineup was sent to me by Elgato. Thank you for making this easier for me. Appreciate that. Super important disclaimer that you know what they sent me. Also important disclaimer, they didn't pay for this video. This is not a biased review in any way. This is all, Elgato doesn't even see this video before it goes up. But yeah, let's go through all these cards, the prices, the features, and figure out which one is what you're looking for. Important note, now that you know who's not sponsoring this video, let me tell you who is, and it's a new sponsor. Just kidding, it's own.tv. For real though, they've been a great sponsor of this channel, and they've got an awesome selection of graphics, overlays, panels, profile pictures, whatever you need. Plus their overlays are modular, so if you're looking at chill vibes, like I'm looking at right now, and all your friends pick it up, none of you will still have the exact same overlay because you can pick and choose the parts that you want. If you'd like to make the smart move like many of the community have done, link in the description below to pick up an overlay that also supports the channel. And if you want 40% off, use code alpha at checkout. Cool. By the way, if you want to see some of these capture cards we're getting into in action, I do stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. I use 2 of them in my rig, sometimes 3. Feel free to hit me up in chat with any questions you might have. Okay, so let's take a look at this capture card lineup. There are 6 capture cards here. Okay, well, there are 5 capture cards here. I'm missing my cam link. I built my sister, who is a 6th grade teacher, a streaming rig. That way she could teach her 6th grade class from home. I mean, I'm not a hero or anything. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I'm just doing my part. Any of you would have done the same. All right, stop. She's got my cam link. We're gonna start with the cam link anyway. Cam link, this little guy's the cheapest one. It's priced at $129, at least it normally is when we're not on lockdown and people are price gouging on Amazon. It can capture 1080p 60 or 4K 30. This little guy was designed for capturing a camera. This is why it lacks an HDMI pass-through or any kind of audio input jack. It's just HDMI on one side, USB on the other. That's it. A couple nice features on this thing. It is a UVC device, which means if you plug it in, Skype or Discord or any of these video chatting things will actually recognize it as a webcam. Also, it's completely plug and play, so it'll work on Mac and PC, which is great. My MacBook is my daily driver, so when I go travel places and want to stream on the go, I usually bring this thing with me. And important note, by the way, this thing, it is a full functioning capture card. If you have a 1080p signal from like your Xbox or anything else and you don't need HDMI pass-through, yeah, it'll work just as well as anything else. Dope. Let's move on to the big boy capture cards, starting with the HD60 S. We're skipping, by the way, the original HD60. We're not talking about USB 2.0 capture cards in here. Don't get one. This thing retails at $179 and it captures 1080p 60. Nothing higher than that. The real advantage of this guy is it's got an HDMI in and an HDMI out. So if you're gaming in 1080p 60, you put this thing between your gaming solution like a console. The other side, you go to your monitor, then you plug the USB side into your PC, and it captures everything you're seeing. It also has a nice little analog input here. So if you're gaming on console, use a headset that's plugged into your controller. You can get like a $10 chat link cable from Elgato, split the cable, that audio connection, and go straight into here so that way your stream can hear your gameplay and your voice and your teammate's voice, anything you might need. Important note with the S, it is not plug and play. It requires Elgato software, which is fine. It's a free download right on their site. Also, because of that, it doesn't work with Mac. Just a heads up. All right, the next USB boy, the HD60 S Plus. This little guy was released about 6 months ago, and it's basically the previous capture card with a couple upgrades, some of them pretty good. For example, it can now capture in 4K 30 and it can pass through a full 4K 60. So if you're running a next gen console like one of the new Xboxes or PlayStations that actually game in 4K 60, you can use this guy, plug it in, that 4K 60 HDR can go in the input, out the output to your screen, see that full resolution, while your stream, which really people only watch in 1080p anyway, still get that 1080p 60 or 4K 30 footage. Important note here, it can actually capture the HDR as well, as long as you're doing it in 1080p 60. They also added the plug and play capability, just like the Cam Link, so it'll work without any of the Elgato software. It'll work on a Mac, and the extra features added to this thing brought the price up by $20 to $199. So if any of those features are necessary for you, I'd recommend it. Definitely a much more versatile card. All right, let's get into internal cards, the ones that go straight into your PCIe slots, no cables, no mess, nice and clean. Let's start with the HD60 Pro. This little guy is the oldest card in this lineup we're looking at here. It's about 5 years old, and while I actually use one, it could use a couple updates. It's essentially an HD60 S, almost spec for spec, but internal. I mean, it does have a slightly higher bit rate and it has an internal encoder, but neither of those things, important note, neither of those things actually matter unless you're recording raw gameplay footage in their own software. That's the only time those apply. So if you're using it for streaming in OBS, literally absolutely nothing changes. It's even the same price, $179, same price as the HD60 S. I would love to see Elgato refresh this card and add a couple kind of necessary features for today's gamers, things like 4K 60 pass-through, things like HDR support, even maybe being able to use the footage in multiple apps at the same time, like we see with the 4K 60 Pro. Which, let's get into the 4K 60 Pro. So this is actually the Mark II of the 4K 60 Pro. They had a pretty massive refresh about 6 months ago. In fact, I've got the original and the new one. Let me just grab them both for you. Here we go. Here is the Mark II that we're talking about today. Here is the original. It is a beefy boy. This thing is so much heavier too. It's nutty. But let's talk about this guy. It's got a couple bells and whistles that none of the other capture cards have. First thing, and kind of the main reason people buy it, is it captures in 4K 60, or it can capture in 1440p 140, or it can capture in 1080p 240 hertz, all in HDR10. So really whatever feasible footage you might have, this thing can handle it. That's generally what people pay for this for. They're gaming in super high refresh rates. They want to be able to capture it. Here you go. However, there are a couple really nice extra functions they added to the Mark II that I'm a big fan of. The big one being that you can open this, like I mentioned in the previous one, you can open the footage from this in multiple apps. So for your stream in OBS, you can overlay your designs and your face, your webcam, your alerts, all those things, while in the background, you can also be running their 4K capture utility, capturing clean footage directly off this thing. Nothing going on top of it. This is great for YouTubers and other content creators who want to grab raw gameplay footage while they're streaming. Important note, this thing is a x4 PCIe card, so make sure you have enough slots available on your motherboard. The original 4K 60, this chunky boy over here, started at $399 when it first retailed, and when they made it smaller and added features, they actually lowered the cost down to $249. So a little bit easier to swallow there. Kind of nice. But now, this is what we're here for. The brand new 4K 60 S Plus. Skipped straight over the 4K 60 S name, went right for the Plus. You know what? Elgato, you do you. I respect you for it. So brave. As I mentioned earlier, this thing captures 4K 60 HDR and sends it over to your PC via HDMI. As far as I know, only capture card on the market that can do that. Also, if you don't want to send it to your PC, like I mentioned earlier, you got a fancy little SD card slot. You can record it directly to that without even needing a PC. And we'll get into what that's about in a little bit, because that's actually, I want to talk about it. Important note, by the way, you can't do those both at the same time. You either send it to the card or you send it to a PC. Know that. So the way they're actually able to send that massive signal over USB-C, which by the way, before you couldn't fit that uncompressed image over that bandwidth. They actually added an encoder built into this guy, an HEVC encoder. So the footage is actually pre-encoded on this device into a high quality, smaller file, and then sent to your PC. And by the way, we will get into the quality of this footage. But yeah, essentially there's a tiny little computer inside here doing what OBS normally does on your computer. It does it right in here, just so it can go over USB-C. Important to know though, that processing time does cause a slight delay. So if you're running this in OBS, you'll notice about a 1/4 of a second delay. Not anything crazy, like your reactions aren't gonna be out of time with your gameplay, but you will need to sync your audio with it. One of the groups of people this is aimed at that I think are gonna take advantage of this, and clearly this is what they're aimed at based on their marketing material, is professional gamers who go and compete at events. Being able to bring this thing to an event, set it down next to your setup, and just capture your footage directly onto an SD card, I think we're about to see a lot of competitive gamers start to capture their competitive footage from events, which could be really cool. I mean, you wouldn't need a PC with you. You could just use this and set up your camera and then just composite those with your overlays later, and now you have an awesome video. The other group of people that I think are really gonna start to take advantage of this, that Elgato didn't really mention, are gaming YouTubers. And let me explain, because yes, you can capture in OBS. However, I recorded raw gameplay footage onto this thing and compared it side by side. Not the same. Let me just show you the side-by-side footage between recording in OBS and recording directly onto this guy. Looking at these two side by side, you might at first think that the OBS one looks better. This is entirely because of the oversaturation. At first glance, it makes it pop. While the 4K 60 S Plus actually has more accurate colors and a higher dynamic range, which is gonna give you much more options in editing. And if you wanna crank up the saturation in post, it's like a bar. Go ahead and do it. But the main thing that I noticed between these two, I want you to look at some of the textures in the background. Take a look at the detail of the 4K 60 S Plus versus the OBS recording. There's so much more detail in this thing, and I was only recording in 1080p because I don't actually have a 4K gaming monitor yet. We'll do that in the future. But if this is the difference in detail you're seeing in 1080p, if we jump up to 4K, it's gonna look like two completely different games. Being real with you, if I started a gaming YouTube channel and made YouTube videos while I wasn't live, 100% I'd be recording with this thing. It's cheaper than a second PC, it's more convenient than a second PC, records right to an SD card, and the quality is just insane. I mean, now that I've given this thing all my praise, I'm sure you're assuming I'm gonna start using this. I'm not gonna be swapping out my 4K 60 Pro with this guy. Let me tell you some of the caveats why I won't be using this quite yet. First one, 0 high refresh rates are supported on this, so absolutely nothing over 60 FPS. You got 1080 60 and 4K 60, which leads us to the next one. It doesn't support 1440p, which is gaming monitor right there, 1440p. You hate to see it. And then there is the 1/4 of a second latency issue, which in all honesty isn't a huge deal, especially if you're capturing the audio over HDMI, so the game and the audio are synced up anyway. But for me, using a Go XLR, basically what I'd have to do is I would have to delay every other source a full 250 milliseconds just to compensate and bring everything back together in sync. So, not doing it. Sorry, it's not happening. There's also one thing that I feel like they really missed an opportunity with here. This thing's got an SD card slot on it. Make it an SD card reader for your PC. I'm already recording footage directly on here. Let me access this SD card from my PC and transfer my footage to my editor or load it into my editor. Just Elgato, if this thing could be used as a card reader, this would be permanently sitting on my desk. I know AVermedia did a card like that a long time ago. I think it was called their Pro Gamer Portable 2. It had a micro SD card slot on it, and it could do some of the same things this could, but it was only 1080p 60. It was USB 2, so streaming in OBS wasn't a good time. It was old, they did it a long time ago, but it could be used as a card reader, and I would love to see that in here. Speaking of AVermedia, I would absolutely love to do a video comparing AVermedia cards with Elgato cards and kind of seeing where they match up and which one I recommend at different price points. I just have to get a hold of some of those and maybe buy like 5 AVermedia cards, because Elgato sends me everything they have, makes it really easy to do these videos. We'll see. Definitely some huge advantages to this guy and definitely some serious setbacks, completely depending on your use case. But all in all, that should answer all your questions about which capture card you need. I get a lot of questions in my Twitch chat asking which capture card is best, which one should I buy? And my answer is always, what are you capturing? What do you need? Are you doing high frame rates? Are you only doing 1080 60? There are a lot of different options because there are a lot of different types of gamers. And really, I mean, some of you would be just fine even gaming on a Cam Link, while some of you will need the 4K 60 Pro. So I hope this video provided all the answers that you needed. I hope it helped. Again, reminder, I do stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Link to that in the description below. Also, if there were a couple things that you think I missed that you want to have a conversation with someone about, we have a whole Discord of like over 40,000 members, all of which have probably some kind of capture card. So feel free to jump in there, ask some questions, make some friends. I hope this helped. And as always, happy streaming. What is this thing? Get out of here.
Okay, come get him up. Come raise him. Come raise him. No, I just blew him up.